Good afternoon. Welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us for the launch of our Payroll Report and Salary Guide 2018. This webinar is being recorded and will be available to listen to on our website, which is hayes.co.uk/payroll salary guide. It will also be available on our YouTube channel. By way of brief introduction, I'm Helen Livesey, Director of Hayes Payroll Management. I'm joined today by Samantha Mann, Senior Policy and Research Officer at the CIPP. To kick off though, I'll be running you through some of the findings of our report, including the payroll recruitment market, payroll salaries, what skills you need to future-proof to your payroll department, and providing you with recommendations as to how to attract top payroll talent in these skills-short times. I will then hand over to Samantha, who will be giving you an update on payroll legislation. This will be followed by a question and answer session. You can type us questions through the system in the Q&A box, which we will answer at the end of the webinar. For this report, we surveyed nearly 450 payroll employers and professionals from organisations of all sizes and across all sectors, and from both in-house payroll departments and outsourced bureaus. The first of our findings was a very positive one. As you're all probably aware, payroll employers are optimistic about business activity for the year ahead. A huge 93% of all payroll employers we surveyed stated that their organisation's business activity had increased or stayed the same over the last 12 months. When asked about anticipated business level activities for the year ahead, this figure rose to even higher at 96%. This level of optimism and expected activity is probably unsurprising. The recent flurry of new legislation and regulation changes, including IR35, the gender pay gap reporting, General Data Protection Regulation, or GDPR as commonly known, and pension auto-enrolment, has resulted in payroll functions being increasingly perceived as not simply essential, but a key strategy priority, the front line of ensuring A1 regulation compliance for many organisations. In tandem with this positive outlook, payroll recruitment is firmly on the agenda. Nearly half of employers increased their payroll headcount in the last year. And to cement these findings, in just the last week, which was only a 4-day working week due to Easter, Hayes Payroll Management registered a higher number of payroll vacancies compared to the exact same time last year. So who exactly are payroll employers like yourselves looking to hire? Let's break down the payroll qualifications, experience and skill sets that are most in demand currently. 3/4 of payroll employers look for candidates with professional payroll qualifications when hiring. Of those, 73% want candidates with a payroll technician certificate, and 62% look for a foundation degree in payroll management. Both of these qualifications are offered by the CIPP. Of course, the reasons for having qualified candidates in your departments is essential. Our survey showed that the top reasons most employers believe payroll candidates should undertake further formal qualifications include helping prove a professional is committed to their self-improvement, helping professionals keep up with the many legislation changes affecting the profession, and ensuring candidates stand out from their peers when looking to hire or promote. 10% also stated that formal qualifications help professionals keep up with the technological changes and improve their competence with the latest payroll systems. These reasons are probably why over half of employers stated they would offer a higher base salary to a candidate with a CIPP qualification. However, over 1/3 of employers found that applicants in the last year lacked the necessary qualifications. In fact, less than 20% of the payroll professionals we surveyed held a payroll technician certificate, and only 22% held a foundation degree in payroll management. So competition for professional qualified candidates is therefore likely to be particularly fierce. And to cement this, a real-life example. The week before Easter, I registered a candidate who was studying her CIPP, and she was halfway through her Year 2. I spec'd her CV out to 5 organisations that she'd told me when I interviewed her that she'd love to work for locally. All 5 replied to me saying she was a very, very good candidate, with 4 wanting to interview her. I went back to the candidate and she chose her favourite 2 roles out of the 4 that were available. She actually got offered both positions. So this just shows that candidates who are studying or who are CIPP qualified are very much demand in this current climate. In addition to qualifications, varied payroll experience is also highly in demand by employers. Over a third of those who hired in the last year said that payroll applicants lacked sector-specific experience. Furthermore, 80% of payroll employers stated that experience of processing different payroll sizes was important when hiring. 78% said the same about candidates with experience of processing different types of payroll, such as temporary, permanent, contract, and 63% wanted candidates with experience processing payroll at different frequencies, so hourly, daily, 4-weekly, monthly, etc. Of course, qualifications and technical experience aren't the only qualities payroll employers are looking for. Employers also want core skills, which each payroll professional should either already possess or be developing. These include skills such as attention to detail, effective communication, and legislation awareness. In fact, 77% of those we surveyed stated they would hire a payroll professional with the ideal combination of core skills, but with fewer qualifications or less payroll experience, because they rated the core skills higher. Looking at the exact core skills most in demand, employers required a different combination depending on the type of role. As we can see on this slide, for more junior payroll positions, so payroll clerks and administrators, the type of skills that were in demand were attention to detail, problem solving, and reliability and honesty. For the middle management roles like supervisory roles or team leader roles, they were communication and commercial awareness, legislation skills, and attention to detail. And finally, for senior roles like heads of payroll and payroll managers, leadership and project management, commercial awareness, and legislation awareness and strategic thinking was what came out on top. With specific regard to legislation knowledge, 45% of employers stated that the General Data Protection Regulation, GDPR, has been or will be the single most challenging piece of legislation to implement or prepare for. This was followed by pension auto-enrolment, the gender pay gap reporting, and IR35. As a result, candidates with comprehensive and operational understanding, knowledge or experience of these pieces of legislation may find themselves in higher demand, particularly at the more senior end of the market. So recruitment is firmly on the agenda, but hiring challenges persist. There are considerable challenges to payroll recruitment in the current market. In fact, 90% of employers stated they found recruiting payroll professionals extremely or somewhat challenging. The most notable challenge to recruitment is the shortage of the payroll skills. A huge 89% of employers have experienced a shortage of suitable payroll applicants when hiring in the past 12 months. The roles cited as the most difficult were payroll administrators and payroll clerks. I would imagine the reason for this is due to the amount of payroll admin and payroll clerk vacancies there are compared to supervisors and manager roles out in the market. The power of attraction and how to attract top payroll talent. So the current payroll recruitment market is characterised by a combination of skills shortages coupled with an increasing demand for top payroll talent to help manage company growth and ensure compliance with new legislations. The net result of this is that you need to carefully position yourself as an employer of choice in order to beat the competition to attract the best payroll candidates. So how can you do this? What is it that payroll professionals want the most? First, you need to ensure your employees are supported in their ambitions to learn and develop. 80% of payroll professionals who want to undertake further formal qualifications stated that they faced obstacles on their path towards achieving this. Of these, nearly two-thirds were worried about the impact upon their time and workload, and roughly the same number found the lack of personal funding a real challenge. And over a quarter said they face a lack of support from their employers. It therefore stands to reason that employers who support their employees aims of gaining further qualifications, such as the 24% of professionals who want to complete a foundation degree in payroll management, or the CIPP, offer realistic solutions in helping them achieve this. This may be by offering financial support or flexible hours whilst undertaking their qualifications. Employers will benefit from a more knowledgeable workforce and attract and attain ambitious and driven payroll talent. I recently recruited for an organisation in central Birmingham who eventually offered the CIPP qualification to a candidate who was wavering on taking their job offer. Due to them offering the qualification on top of a competitive salary, the candidate accepted their offer straight away, as they desperately wanted to learn and develop and really wanted to study for their CIPP. The benefits to the organisation was that they wrote a clause in their contract which stated that due to them funding the CIPP for the candidate, they couldn't leave the organisation until they completed their qualification and completed a further year after qualifying with the company. This is a win-win for both parties, as the candidate has had their studies paid for and feels they're developing and learning, and the organisation will retain their top talent for much longer. When it comes to improving core skills, over a quarter of professionals think that on-the-job learning is the best way to develop, followed by working with key departments or functions outside the payroll formal training or coaching by a third party. In order to attract new talent and upskill your current workforce, you may want to formalise your development opportunities and consider giving staff the opportunity to work with other departments in the business or offering training days with the support of a third party. Payroll professionals are also highly ambitious. 27% of those we surveyed aspired to be a payroll manager, and 27% wanted to be a head of payroll, and 4% ultimately wanted to reach board level. In tandem with their ambitious nature, most payroll professionals expected to be progressed quickly. Nearly half expected to be in a role for just 1 to 2 years before they were promoted, and 20% think promotion should occur only after 6 months to 1 year in the role. In contrast, most employers believe payroll employees should be in a role for 2 to 5 years before promotion, and only 4% think promotion should come after 6 months to a year. However, employers should remain mindful of these ambitions and be very transparent with regard to progression opportunities in their organisation. They should provide clear objectives required to achieve a promotion and offer regular and comprehensive opportunities to review these. By ensuring professionals are aware of timelines and require on their route to the top, employers can support staff progression while also alleviating progression expectation mismatches between the two. 53% of employers anticipated their payroll employees will see an average salary increase to up to 2.5%, and 20% foresee salary increases of up to 5%. In light of these expected salary increases, it's also important for payroll employers to benchmark their salaries so they do not lose out on prospective candidates to competitors offering better pay. This is especially important in light of the increases to payroll salaries in recent years. In our latest Hays UK salary guide, payroll salaries rose by 4.2% from last year, which is the highest overall increase in the accounting and finance sector, and has actually grown year on year in the last 7 years, highlighting how in demand payroll professionals are and how employees are willing to pay more to attract the best talent. So, how much exactly have payroll salaries risen by? As we mentioned, our UK Hayes Payroll Salary Guide found that payroll has seen the highest wage inflation within all roles we examined across accounting and finance at 4.2%. As you can see from this slide, payroll team leaders have seen salaries offers which have increased by as much as 8.2%. Average salaries are also well increased above inflation for payroll managers, payroll clerks and sole charge payrollers. Sole charge payrollers have seen the increase in demand as many SMEs are looking to bring payroll functions back in-house. So to recap and finalise our report findings, payroll business activity continues to increase largely thanks to new legislations impacting the function. However, acute skills shortages threaten to challenge recruitment plans, which may have significant impact on those payroll departments looking to keep up with growth plans. Organisations can position themselves as employers of choice and attract and retain the top talent by: first, support your payroll professionals in their aims of furthering their qualifications by offering realistic solutions to help them. This could be by offering financial support or flexible hours whilst undertaking their qualifications. This should also look to improve the core skill development, such by offering on-the-job learning, providing staff with the opportunity to work with other departments in the business or working with a third party of formal coaching. Second, remember that there is a mismatch between professionals' progression expectations and employer attitudes. Employers who want to attract and retain top payroll talent should be mindful of their employees' professional ambitions and should be transparent with regarding to their professional opportunities. They should provide clear objectives required to achieve promotion and offer regular and comprehensive opportunities to achieve this. Offering both development opportunities and clear progression pathways will likely be especially helpful to those employers wanting to attract the best talent, but perhaps be unable to keep up with the spiralling wage inflations. And finally, they should aim to benchmark their salaries in line with the industry average, especially in light of the average increases so they don't lose out on the competition, as the payroll market is so incredibly busy at the moment and candidates are very, very aware of how in demand they are. So now we have reviewed some of the findings from the Payroll Report and Salary Guide, I will now hand over to our guest speaker, Samantha Mann from the CIPP. We will both take questions after Samantha has presented. Over to you, Samantha.
Thank you very much for a really interesting presentation. Yes, I am the CIPP Senior Policy Research Officer currently, and it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me. Well, hopefully everybody can hear me now. All right, let's move swiftly on to our agenda slide. There's never any shortage of subjects vying for position when it comes to their inclusion in a legislative update for payroll, particularly one that supports the publication of the 2018 Hayes Payroll Report and Salary Guide, and this which confirms that demand for qualified and knowledgeable payroll professional remains at an all-time high. My agenda items have been in large part influenced by the subjects that employers expect to be the most challenging to implement or to prepare for, and so unsurprisingly it includes gender pay gap reporting, parental leave and pay, general data protection regulation, the minimum wage and modern working, that's one that I've slotted in there because it's an extremely live policy at the moment, and off-payroll working in the public sector, specifically IR 35. So moving swiftly on to gender pay gap reporting. On a global scale, and since April 2017, regulations have required UK employers with 250 or more relevant employees to calculate and report their gender pay gap figures within a year of their snapshot dates, which in the first reporting year were for the public sector employer the 31st of March 2017, and for the private and voluntary sector employer it was the 5th of April 2017. And as the first reporting year has just closed, we can confirm that over 10,000 employers have uploaded their results to the Gender Pay Gap service, and where they will sit for 1 year and be accessible for anyone with an interest to view. This is just one of several measures that UK government have taken in a bid to reduce the UK's gender pay gap, which has been narrowing in recent years, but quite simply it hasn't been narrowing quickly enough. The gender pay gap is a mathematical indicator of gender differences in pay across an organisation and can indicate broader issues in the workplace or industry or sector. It is not a like-for-like comparison or measure of equal pay for equal or similar work, although from headlines over the last 12 months you could be forgiven for thinking so. An organisation can pay equal pay and yet still have a gender pay gap, and the reasons are many and can be extremely complex. The government is taking other steps to reduce the gaps by encouraging women to study and to work in STEM industries, and by STEM I mean science, technology, engineering and mathematics, and encourage greater take-up of shared parental leave by both working parents. Encouraging greater use of flexible working by employers are all examples of recent steps taken, and please watch out for more in the weeks and months ahead. The regulations relating to public sector bodies are similar to those found in the private sector, but do need to be referred to separately. So where you have multi-sector payrolls, you would need to refer to these separately, as there are some differences. And two key differences for public sector employers are that, firstly, their snapshot differs in as much as it falls on the 31st of March. And this measure was introduced following consultation and in recognition of existing requirements on public sector employers. And also, public sector, they don't have to include a written statement signed by an appropriate senior confirming that the figures reported are correct, which is required by private and voluntary sector employers. Employers with a headcount of less than 250 relevant employees, as at their snapshot dates, are not mandated to report their results, but voluntary reporting is being widely and strongly encouraged. ACAS, together with the Government Equalities Office, have published guidance and template documentation to support all employers. We're now into the second year of reporting, and let's briefly recap on what the employer is required to calculate and publish. Specifically, the average gender pay gap as a mean average, the average gender pay gap as a median average. Both report differently and declare different returns. The average gender pay gap as a mean average, and again the average gender pay gap as a median average. And the proportion of males receiving a bonus payment and the proportion of females also receiving a bonus payment. And finally, the proportion of males and females when divided into 4 groups or quartiles, ordered from lowest to highest pay. Time available today limits the coverage we can give to the calculation process, but suffice to say is that this simple list of 6 items belies the complexity of calculations and methodology that underlay these requirements. It's always been widely expected that software would support this process. In year 1, and for a variety of reasons, this hasn't always been the case, and certainly during CIPP recent research we heard from many members who had experiences of significant manual intervention being needed in year 1. In addition to the calculations, a private or voluntary sector employer is also required to produce and publish a declaration that testifies to the accuracy of the figures, and it has to be signed off by somebody in suitable senior management. By including the CEO within this process, it was always anticipated and hoped that there will be organisational buy-in and commitment to addressing any gender pay gap differences that are revealed. As well as being uploaded to the Gender Pay Gap Service, employers are also required to upload to their own website, where the results and statement, where required, can be accessed for 3 years. The intention being to be able to see any trends that arise for the employer. Is their gap narrowing or widening or remaining the same? It is also encouraged, but not compulsory, for employers to tell their story as to why their results report the way they do, and where applicable, any action taken to reduce any gender pay gaps that have been identified going forward. And thinking about what you say in the narrative is important, because it will affect and can affect how figures are presented and represented. Ideally, the narrative will explain why the difference exists and what the employer tends to do about it. Moving on to the subject of parental leave and pay, and we're going to look at 4 different areas here. Shared parental leave has been identified as one of the areas that will offer up challenges to the employer. Certainly a big challenge to the government at the moment will be to encourage take-up, as the results so far seem to suggest that take-up has been very low. Much of this, of course, could be due to the inequality that exists between maternity pay benefits that are available to new working mums as they take their leave. And we're already beginning to see legal challenge by fathers who are not offered the same or similar contractual terms as women with their maternity leave. As this is one of the government initiatives that aims to support the narrowing of the gender pay gap, I think that we can expect to see some activity in this space in the future and when the parliamentary timetable allows. Salary sacrifice and optional remuneration arrangements were very much a topic of news during 2017. And prior to that, in 2016, for mothers on maternity leave, it became an area of concern as it related to their continued eligibility to receive childcare vouchers during their period of maternity leave. Following a decision by the Employment Appeal Tribunal that suggested that during maternity leave, an employer can withhold childcare vouchers provided under a salary sacrifice scheme, the reasoning being, in essence, that the salary sacrifice arrangement for the childcare vouchers simply involved an employee purchasing a benefit from the salary they have earned, and their salary sacrifice, therefore, was effectively just a mechanism whereby the earned salary is diverted to the employer instead of going to the employee, and thus a voucher provided under a salary sacrifice arrangement was simply something purchased with remuneration. And as remuneration can be discontinued during maternity leave, there was no need to continue providing the voucher. Employers should be wary of relying on this one single case, however, as doing so could undermine the scheme itself and risks exposure to penalties for underpaying tax and/or national insurance. Kevin Hollinrake, MP, has introduced a private member's bill in the form of the Parental Bereavement Leave and Pay Bill, and it's currently progressing through Parliament. If it is approved, it will create a statutory right to time off work for employed parents with pay, where eligibility requirements are met, following the loss of a child. It is the aim of government to be prepared to implement the necessary regulations to set out the detail of these rights and bring them into force in the event that this bill is passed by Parliament and becomes the law. In preparation for this eventuality, the Labour Market Directorate has launched a consultation to gather views and opinions on the delivery of the parental bereavement pay and leave, and the consultation will run until the 8th of June. It seeks views from stakeholders on options that will be contained within the regulations that will fulfil certain provisions in the bill. And it focuses on several key areas that include the definition of a bereaved parent, how and when to take the parental bereavement leave and pay, what notice periods, if any, will be required for parental bereavement and leave and pay, and, of course, evidence of an employee's right to take parental leave and pay. The bill provides for a minimum of 2 weeks of leave to be available to all employed parents who lose a child under the age of 18. And if passed, and once it has been brought into force, the parents will be entitled to this leave irrespective of their length of service with their employer, and the entitlement will apply in respect of each child. Pay, however, will be subject to qualifying conditions, as found with other similar periods of statutory pay aimed at helping the working parent. This, of course, does not prevent or prohibit employers going further and providing more generous allowances, and ACAS have a good practice guide to help employers prepare for managing bereavement in the workplace. Flexible working. The most recently published ONS results show that the gender pay gap for full-time workers has fallen to a record low, from 9.4% in 2016 to 9.1% in 2017. But as a step to close the gender pay gap further, the Prime Minister recently called on all employers to improve the pipeline to ensure progress on female representation at senior levels, which will support women to progress to middle management and offer return-to-work schemes, as well as making flexible working a reality for all employees by advertising all jobs as flexible from day one, unless there are solid business reasons not to. The Women's Business Council, which was established back in 2012, will be advising on progress and good practice. The Council will also be providing recommendations in key areas that include middle management, flexible working, working parents, and return to work schemes. And so flexible working is yet another policy area that provides employers and payroll professionals with the further challenge of staying up to date and aware of all change. And it's also an area we see will impact gender pay gap reporting. So swiftly on to minimum wage rates. This slide largely speaks for itself. It confirms the rates currently to be used for pay reference periods that began on or after the 1st of April 2018. And we're reminded at this juncture that the national living wage rates remain largely on course to deliver 60% of average earnings by 2020, which was an aspiration announced by former Chancellor George Osborne. The Low Pay Commission have once again launched their annual review to gather evidence and views of experiences of paying and administrating and complying with national minimum wage regulations. In their spring report of 2016, the Low Pay Commission recommended that the government should consider introducing a requirement that pay slips of hourly paid staff clearly state the hours that are being paid. Back in 2016, the Low Pay Commission were of the view that as much of this data was already being collected, in order to pay workers, it should impose little new burden on employers. We know now how BEIS, the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, have responded to that recommendation from the Low Pay Commission following the recent laying of the Employment Rights Act 1996 Itemised Pay Statement Amendment Order 2018, which will impact employers and their agents as from the 6th of April 2019. The order amends Section 8 of the Employment Rights Act to add to the particulars required within an itemised pay statement to also contain information regarding the number of hours worked by the employee for which they are being paid, but only in situations where the employee's pay varies as a consequence of time worked. In addition to this, the Employment Rights Act 1996 Itemised Pay Statement Amendment No. 2 order provides for an additional change that extends the right to receive an itemised pay statement, together with the associated enforcement provisions, to all workers and not just to employees who work under a contract of employment. Questions, of course, as you would expect, abound, and with the exception of the explanatory notes and the impact assessment, we currently have nothing further than an expectation that new guidance will be published in due course. So moving on to General Data Protection Regulation, and this is a subject that has once again confirmed the importance of team working and payroll being just one of an organisation's critical team members. The General Data Protection Regulation is new law that will replace the Data Protection Act 1998 and will apply in the UK from the 25th of May 2018. The government has confirmed that the UK's decision to leave the EU will not affect the commencement of the GDPR. Many of GDPR's concepts and principles are the same as those in current DPA. However, there are new elements and enhancements that organisations will have to do, some things for the first time and other things differently. They'll need to be able to demonstrate now how they're complying. It will no longer be enough to simply say that they are complying. And again, we need to see, we are seeing new legislation that's looking to get the attention and buy-in at board level to ensure that data protection by default is established right throughout an organisation. Where one is needed, the Data Protection Officer will report to the highest level. They will operate independently and they will need to be adequately resourced. The Information Commissioner's Officer can take action to change the behaviour of organisations and individuals that collect, use and keep personal information. This includes criminal prosecution, non-criminal enforcement and audit. And the ICO has the power to impose a monetary penalty on a data controller of up to £500,000. Organisations will be required to demonstrate compliance, and failure to do so in the event of data breaches, there will be significant financial penalties. And these, of course, are the details that have grabbed the headlines by being up to €20 million or 4% of global turnover. Preparation will have seen employers nominating staff for key roles, revising their procedures and processes, and liaising with third parties to ensure their compliance going forward. So very briefly, again, this slide is largely self-explanatory, but the General Data Protection Regulation also provides data subjects with the right to be informed, the right of access, the right to rectification, so when the information held about them is wrong, to put it right, the right to erasure, which is commonly reported as the right to being forgotten, the right to restrict processing, and the right to object, and finally, further rights in relation to automated decision-making and profiling. Off-payroll working in the public sector has been highlighted in the Hays Payroll Report and Salary Guide as being amongst the one of the top 4 subjects, well, specifically IR35, that has been considered to be the most challenging to implement or to prepare for. And certainly based on feedback that we're receiving from CIPP members who work in the public sector and who have been dealing with this new obligation since April 2017, I think we can be safe in saying that delivery has not been without its challenges. So far, the reasons for these challenges are many and varied and again require significant teamwork, but not least due to the short notice that was given to its implementation. From April 2017, changes were introduced to the way the current intermediaries legislation, IR35 as it's commonly known, is applied to off-payroll working in the public sector. Before this, the contractor would assess each contract themselves to establish whether it was caught by intermediaries legislation, and if so, account for pay-as-you-earn tax and NI that would be due on the deemed payment arising. As from the 6th of April 2017, the fee payer, where the contract is for work within the public sector body, decides if the IR35 rules apply to that contract. And there's also a requirement for the public sector body to provide information to agencies and workers about whether engagements fall within the off-payroll rules. And where the rules do apply, the payment will then become subject to pay-as-you-earn, income tax and national insurance contribution. These changes do not yet affect workers and PSCs who provide their services to private sector organisations. However, consultation is expected. It is imminent. HMRC provided a new digital employment status service to help identify where engagements fall within the off-payroll rules and to support customers impacted by this new reform. I apologise there. I hadn't noticed that my slide had not moved on. Okay, and just very finally, this slide reveals how CIPP members can get help from the CIPP policy team and across the CIPP services, but also more recently how HMRC are now delivering digital education and information webinars to the agent community on subjects that once would have been delivered via the Working Together programme. We're going to be moving on to the questions section, but that just leaves me to say thank you very much for listening. It's been a pleasure to join with you today. When it comes to payroll, there's always more to know, more to learn, and more to discuss. Is there any reason that we see in the Hays Payroll Report and Salary Guide that employers have increased their headcount in payroll teams this year and continue to bemoan the shortage of qualified payroll professionals? If you haven't considered investing in your career with CIPP membership, there really never has been a better or more relevant time to join us. Thank you very much. If I hand back to Helen and Ellie to join the question section.
Hello, this is back with Helen. So thank you for Samantha for that great presentation. I'm now going to open the floor to for any questions that have come through. And we have had some questions come through. One that's come through numerous times from quite a lot of the people on the call is a question for you, Samantha. Okay. So with GDPR being an EU regulation, what will happen once the UK leaves the EU in relation to GDPR compliance?
Well, the government confirmed quite early on in the process that the UK leaving the EU would make no difference. To ensure that it is delivered, obviously the regulation is a single regulation signed up to by all EU member states. How it will be delivered from a legislative perspective in the UK is with the new Data Protection Act, which will, A, replace the old Act, but also ensure that the principles that are established in GDPR are also delivered in law in the UK. It goes a little further. There are some slight differences to the regulations, but yes, that's the way it will be delivered.
Fine. Okay. I think some of the people on the call were hoping maybe they won't have to deal with GDPR.
Oh, yes, just one of many.
So the next question that has come in is actually a question for myself. So I've had a question come through from an organisation where they've said that obviously in the presentation that I did, I was talking about how a lot of employees want to be promoted and be promoted quite quickly. They've put a little note saying, oh gosh, we can't actually promote everybody. And obviously they've got quite a big department by the sound of it. So he was basically saying, you know, there are only a few promotions available. So what advice would Hayes give in this particular instance where they're a large team, but there are only ever going to be a few promotions for people? So we at Hayes hear that really quite regularly, as you can imagine. Firstly, I would say it's important to probably bear in mind and to remind your employees that career progression is not always vertical. I think you automatically assume that it is vertical, but that isn't always the case. So I guess, you know, I assume this person that's asked this question is a head of payroll or a payroll manager. I'd probably consider, you know, horizontal moves for these people in your teams if vertical ones aren't possible. I guess career progression is not always simply about climbing the ladder, but, you know, some people might perhaps feel that promotion is more about, I don't know, learning, you know, EMEA payroll or learning different pieces of legislation. So it's just as important for employees to be given new opportunities and responsibilities so they feel that they are always challenged in their career and they don't feel that they're very sort of static. I would say career progression is not always just about, as I say, moving on to a new role. It's sometimes about just wanting to learn more, so just deepening their skill set, offering regular feedback, providing training. So, you know, here at Hayes Payroll Management, we offer a number of seminars across the UK for payroll, and I did one here in Birmingham just recently. So there were a number of heads of payroll and payroll managers that came to that seminar, but did those heads of payroll and payroll managers then go back and download everything they learned from that seminar to their teams? Because, you know, training and communication, you know, is often a way that people feel that they are progressing in their career. And finally, I would say if there is no career movement or progression at all for a particular employee, I would perhaps be as honest as you can with them, never sort of overpromise and then underdeliver, because that really does upset candidates, and that's probably one of the reasons why many of them come through our door. So I would probably give them really good objectives and timelines. So even if you were to say to them, you know, I don't know, I plan to retire in 5 years' time, you know, give them the exact sort of time frame so they know that, you know, what opportunities are available, I guess. And I think, you know, honesty is probably always the best policy. So let me see what other questions are coming through. Hang on,
Helen,
let me just click.
can I add to that as well? Can I also
say,
you know, just picking up on your comment to sort of offer great new opportunities. We have a number of roundtable opportunities throughout the year. When we're responding in written form to a consultation, a government consultation, of which there are a number at the moment, we go out to our members to gather their views, their experiences, their opinions on what's being proposed. And we do this through survey, but we also do it where we can through roundtable discussions and debate, and these are open to our full and fellow members. And And actually, there are a lot of full members who don't get the opportunity to sit around those tables because their managers might have attended those round tables, and yet they're both full members of the CIPP. So, giving them an opportunity to have, the time out of the office to attend those sort of meetings, to give their voice, to share their experiences, because actually, sort of being able to share your knowledge and your experiences, is an opportunity not only for you to benefit individually, but also for the for others to benefit as well. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point. I've had another question for you as well, Samantha. I've had a lady say, if you have an AAT MVQ level 3 qualification, what qualification would be best to strive for next to improve and upskill their skill set? I mean, I personally, and I'm keen to hear what you would say, I would probably say doing the CIPP foundation degree would be the next level from an AAT MVQ. Would you agree?
I would absolutely agree with that. I mean, obviously, as a next step, as you'll be aware, that you can go up to MSc level with the qualifications, but absolutely, the FD offers a really challenging. I mean, I started with AAT qualifications and then moved into. So that I did the diploma. That's how how old I am, which was the predecessor to the FD. But I absolutely would recommend that. Yeah, really good.
I would agree with that, and I think from a CV point of view, to the lady that's asked this question, when we interview candidates, we would expect after an AAT, if somebody wanted to then continue in the world of payroll, you would expect to see the CIPP qualification on their CV. So that's that question. Let me just see another question. I've had one come through that is asking what are the reasons, as they've said here, Helen, what is the most common reason that you hear in an interview room about why candidates are coming to you and why they want to leave? Which is a question I get it's a question I'm always asked. But I would pretty much say 8 times out of 10, the reason why a payroll candidate wants to leave is because they feel they can't progress, or they feel that they're not valued in their current organisation, because nobody wants to work for an organisation where they don't feel valued and loved. And that, I would say, is probably the most common reason. Yes, obviously there are reasons where I get a candidate that says, their work-life balance, they want to work perhaps nearer home, or, they want more money. But I would say probably 7 or 8 times out of 10, it's because they feel they can't progress and they feel very undervalued. And I think employers forget the fact that, people just want to be, loved and recognised in an organisation and feel really, really valued. So I would say that is probably singly the biggest reason why people will walk through our door and want to register. Another question that I've had in from a gentleman, it's another question for myself. He's put, it's quite a funny question. He's put that, obviously I was speaking earlier in the slides about that employers look for softer skills. He's putting here that his team is technically great, really technically good, but he says, how can I best help them acquire these softer skills? Because he said, more often than not, we get more and more queries with regard to their own particular payroll, and he said sometimes their communication and the way they deliver the information is perhaps not always the best. So we would say here at Hayes, softer skills it's really difficult to comment, really. They can be learned and they should be developed, and I guess as an employer, you need to do everything you can to perhaps, develop these softer skills for your department. And as mentioned in the presentation, on-the-job learning is really, really key. But working with other departments outside of payroll can really help payroll professionals hone their commercial skills and help their communication and grow their sort of softer skills. And also, as Sam mentioned earlier, the CIPP and Hayes offer all sorts of seminars and training and what have you that you can send your teams to, or partnering with another third party to provide training sessions will help develop these skills. So I guess that's something that you need to be aware of, what softer skills they don't perhaps display, and maybe, you know, I guess it is their own responsibility and your responsibility to perhaps, you know, develop these skills.
Yeah, no, can I also add a little bit in there, Helen?
Yeah.
It's great to hear that they're well skilled. It's worrying to hear that they don't always communicate very well, and of course communication is one of the key core skills. But I'm sure you have maybe 1, 2 exceptional members of the team who, let's be honest, you would love to talk to on the phone. You pick up the phone, you ask them a question, they give you a clear, concise, informative answer, and they deliver it in a friendly manner. Maybe they could be mentor. Maybe they could be trained to sort of mentor colleagues in those sort of skills. So I'd like to think that you've got a couple in there who could deliver that. So
yeah, absolutely.
And again, that offers a line of progression if one doesn't actually obviously exist.
I've had a question for you, Sam, on shared parental leave. Was a consultation carried out to extend shared parental leave to others? They're worried. They're saying they're worried they might have missed it.
Yeah, there was. It's an excellent question. There was mention 2 or 3 or 4 budgets ago that there would be a further consultation to extend the right to others, for example, to working grandparents, for single parents, to take advantage of shared parental leave. Unfortunately, this was one of the victims of Brexit. The UK went to the vote. We voted to leave Europe, and that threw the parliamentary timetable into total apoplexy. So the consultation went on the back burner, but I don't think it's gone away. I just don't think we're going to see a full public consultation anytime soon. But an excellent question.
Okay. And then the last question, which I might need Ellie, our host, to come back on. I've had several people asking, will we be sending the slides out to everybody that has logged on to this webinar?
Hi, Helen.
Hello.
I think that's one just to pick up offline. Once we've spoken to Eleanor, is in how we can get those circulated to them, whether that's centrally or directly by your team.
Lovely. Okay, well, we're now approaching 4 minutes to 2, so I'm going to start to wrap up the webinar. So I hope you found today's session a real useful insight into the payroll recruitment market, what skills are in demand and how best to attract your top payroll talent. I'd also like to extend my thanks once again to our speaker, Samantha Mann from the CIPP, bless you, for providing an excellent presentation. And obviously, thank you all for joining our webinar today. If you would like to receive a copy of these slides, if you speak to your usual contact within Hayes, or I think there is going to be a form on our webpage. We'd be delighted to look into that into more detail for you and how we can obviously help you guys out. So if you do need to get in touch with myself, I'll just quickly give you my direct dial. It's 0844 778 2376, or you can email me at helen.livesey@hayes.com. I'm also on LinkedIn, as is Sam. So if you did want to get hold of either of us, feel free to get hold of us that way. And then to download a copy of the guide, you can go to hayes.co.uk/payroll-salary-guide. Thank you once again all for dialing in, and if you do ever need us, give us a shout. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Bye-bye.